Hello guys, welcome back to That Random Geek Abby. Today, you saw the title, I am going to be yapping about Night at the Museum for as long as I want. Because Night at the Museum is way too underrated. Now, one of the other reasons I wanted to do this is because lately, if you've seen my latest community post, I've been locking in on Minecraft while also like watching YouTube videos of people yapping about movies, and that inspired me. So, like, if you like to lock in on other things while also putting something in the background of just, like, somebody yapping, you can turn on this video. You know, I do not mind if you go do something else while watching this video, because it's more like you're gonna be listening to it, because there's nothing interesting, like, going on editing-wise, it's just me yapping. So yeah, shout out to Daz Reviews and the Glad and Gladiator, specifically, his Ice Age video that was like 3 hours long. I actually, like, watched that whole thing except for the snack breaks, because I wasn't really interested in the snack breaks. That was really cool, and that's what inspired me to do this video. So yeah, I want to give you guys a bit of an idea of what I'm going to be doing here, so I'm going to kind of tell you my outline for this video. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about my original experience with Night at the Museum, so, like, the stuff that I knew kind of before I even watched the series, and my beginning watching, like, my first time watching the series. Then I'm gonna talk about how I kind of entered the fandom. Oh, also, real quick, I'd like to clarify, I'm kind of ill-informed on all the fandom stuff. Like, I've just seen Pinterest stuff and, like, screenshots of Tumblr posts on Pinterest, and that's kind of all I know about the fandom. So, like, if I say stuff that doesn't sound right about the fandom, or, like, whatever, it's because I don't really know. And then, yeah, I'm gonna be talking about how I kind of entered the fandom. I'm gonna talk about the fandom itself, or, as I just said, what I know about the fandom, which isn't too much because I don't have Tumblr, but, you know, just based on what I've seen on Pinterest, to be honest, and YouTube, of course. And then I'm gonna talk about the ships in this series. I'm kind of going from order, like, in an order of what I want to talk about the least to what I want to talk about the most. So, like, I'm just gonna get more and more interested in what I'm talking about as I go on. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about the ships in the series, the canon ones and non-canon, or whatever I know about the non-canon ones. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the humor in the series, cause why not? It's really funny. It's a comedy series. Or I should say trilogy. It's a trilogy. Then I'm gonna talk about my opinions on the second movie, because I kind of have some controversial opinions on the second movie. I do not like it that much, so I'd like to talk to you guys about that. And then I'll talk about why I love this trilogy so much, like the main reasons. This is where it gets interesting. Now, the point that I kind of wanted to end this on, this is also kind of, yeah, never mind, actually. The point that I wanted to end this on is talking about the lore, because the lore for me is the most interesting part, the part I'm gonna be most interested in, and I think it would be really cool to talk about the lore, or, you know, what I know of the lore, and of course what I don't know, because there's a lot that none of us knows, and we kind of just have to make theories, because a lot of the series does not clarify what's going on. And then, at the very end, I'm going to attempt to recite, the 10 minutes of the third movie that I know, because for a video a while back, I wanted to try to memorize Night at the Museum 3 entirely, like, memorize all the lines for a video. I decided not to, like, document myself, but I do now know 10 minutes of the movie, so I'm going to recite that at the end of this video. I might speed it up, I might not, it depends, but of course you guys can also skip it, because I think I'll be putting timestamps in the description, because I think that's how you get the video itself to have, like, chapters, and even if it doesn't have chapters, you guys can pick the different timestamps that you want to hear me yap about. Anyway, I think I'm gonna get into it now. I think I'm ready. I'm gonna talk about my original experience with this movie trilogy. So, the first Night at the Museum related thing I ever really saw was this trailer for Night at the Museum 3, Secret of the Tomb, in a Penguins of Madagascar DVD, because those two released the same year. They were both released in 2014, and I loved the Madagascar movies when I was a kid, especially Penguins of Madagascar. So, the Night at the Museum Secret of the Tomb trailer was in my Penguins of Madagascar DVD. It still is. If my DVD player was working, I might even actually, like, show you guys the trailer that I saw a gajillion times. But for some reason, I, like, used to watch DVDs so much that, like, my mom would just kind of turn one on and then let me do my thing, watch the movie. So, she never, like, sometimes she wouldn't skip the trailers, or we would, like, no one would skip the trailers before the movie started, so I kind of just had to sit through them, and thus, I have actually talked about this in a YouTube short before. If you guys have been subscribed that long, and you can remember, you know, because I've talked about this, there are certain lines from Night at the Museum Secret of the Tomb that are lodged into my brain because of that trailer. You know how in movie trailers they'll have, like, a couple funny lines that all the dramatic music and sound effects stop to, and then they just say something funny like, "What are you staring at?" What are you staring at? You've never seen a beautiful, attractive, gorgeous woman before who could be a model if she didn't love pizza so much. Yeah, that's kind of locked in my brain now, because of Penguins of Madagascar. So, yeah. And then, of course, several years later, I don't exactly remember how this happened, but my family, over the past several years, have had this thing where, specifically on Friday nights, we will, like, rent movies that my parents want to show us, and watch them together. So eventually my parents were like, "Oh, we should show our kids Night at the Museum." I didn't really care that much. I thought, hee funny monkey, hee funny cowboy, you know, all that stuff. And then, you know, remembered it several years later and thought, oh, I should rewatch this. But, you know, there wasn't much to it. I remember thinking the Hugh Jackman thing was so funny. Like, even before I was actually a part of the Night at the Museum fandom, because of the third movie, that Hugh Jackman part. I remember every time Hugh Jackman was mentioned, I'd be like, Hugh Jackman? Because it's too funny. And then, of course, the next part of my OG experience would be the beginning of this year, when I was kind of bored. We were looking for movies to watch on Hulu, and I was like, oh, we should rewatch Night at the Museum, because the Night at the Museum was there in the spot that we were looking through on Hulu to find a movie to watch. And I was like, oh, we should watch a Night at the Museum. Or we should, yeah, it wasn't like that, it was more like, we should rewatch Night at the Museum. So we rewatched Night at the Museum, and that was really fun. That's where I started getting into the fandom. This is a little embarrassing for me, but the main reason I kind of got into the fandom in the first place and started liking the movies so much, this is kind of a tendency I have, which I don't exactly enjoy. I started liking the Night at the Museum movies because I had a crush on Achman Ra. Yes, that's my reason. I remember, starting up Night at the Museum after years of having not seen it, or years after my first time seeing it, and just being like, wait, if my memory serves me correct, that Egyptian mummy guy was cute. And then, with 20 minutes left in the movie, I got a crush. I was like, wait, I was right! Because I didn't care back then, I guess. When I was younger, when I first watched the movies, I didn't care. And then, my entering into the fandom, really, it came after I watched the movies again. So, another weird thing about when I, like, rewatched the movies, is that I skipped over the second movie. And, you know, eventually I'll talk about, you know, why I don't really like the second movie that much. But I skipped over the second movie. So I watched the first one. I watched the third one on my own time. Then I watched the second one. Then I watched the third one with my family. And then I watched the second one with my family. Actually, I don't think it was that way. It was... I watched the first one with my family, watched the third one on my own time, watched the second one with my family, watched the third one with my family again, because I loved it so much. And yeah. So, that's a little weird, extra weird thing. So, my entering into the fandom kind of started when I made videos about Night at the Museum. I remember my first YouTube short I made about Night at the Museum was using an Apple and Onion audio. And Onion was like, Apple was like, what's wrong with you? And Onion goes, I'm in love. And Apple's like, with who? And Onion's like, the Queen of England. Except in my case, it was Aukman from Night at the Museum. And then Apple goes, isn't she like 90 years old now? But except I changed it to, you know, to fit the situation, as you do with YouTube Shorts audios. That was the first video I made. I continued on to make a couple more. There was one YouTube short that I deleted. It was using an audio from home. Now to videos I watched. Sorry, this is not very organized in the way I'm speaking, because I keep remembering other stuff I want to say. There was this video I kept passing by on my feed. It was, some of you guys might know about this, I don't know. Tonka Joey's, Night at the Museum movie reviews, but 20% is about Gentavious. I kept passing by that for some reason, but as I got into the Night at the Museum fandom, I decided to actually watch that video. And I did, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny, and I still do. I love that video. And then, you know, I just kind of started searching for Night at the Museum videos on YouTube. There was this person that made compilations of Night at the Museum TikToks. I tried to watch those videos, but, you know, there were, like, a lot of F-words and stuff in the TikToks. So I don't really, like, I'm a Christian, so I don't like hearing cuss words and stuff. I believe that cuss words are wrong, of course. And, so, you know, once I heard a whole bunch of cuss words in the TikToks, in the videos, I was like, you know what, maybe not. I also watched, because there have been a few videos on YouTube of, like, Night at the Museum as vines, like old popular vines, and then they put labels. I think you guys probably know, they put labels over the people in the vines' heads that say, like, the names of the characters, and it's basically, like, the people in the vines are representing the characters, or that's what the person that made the video thinks. So yeah, I watched those. You know, there's not that much Night at the Museum content to find on YouTube, which is why I tried to make YouTube shorts and stuff about it. Because I wanted there to be more Night at the Museum content. So yeah, that's videos I made and videos I watched as I entered the fandom. Now, of course, I have Pinterest, so I feel a little bit more connected with the fandom and what they like, and, you know, I get to be more of a fangirl about it and see people's headcanons and fan arts. I love the fan arts. Unless they're of ships. I'm not a big shipper. I'll talk about that later. And now, let's get into what I know about the fandom itself, which is interesting, because I completely forgot that was what I was talking about. So yeah, I personally feel like most of the fandom revolves around Gentavious, if you guys don't know what that is. It's, the ship of Jedediah, the cowboy, and Octavius, the Roman general. I don't ship this ship, to be honest. I honestly don't ship many ships at all. especially if they're non-canon. Usually I ship the non-canon, or no, usually I ship the canon ships, but not that much. I'm not a big shipper. So yeah, I feel like most of the fandom revolves around Jedtavius and everybody thinking about how cute they are and all that stuff. Like, a lot of the Night at the Museum videos and stuff I saw were about Jedtavius, or like in the Night at the Museum Vines videos, there'd be vines that people made to be about the ship of Jedediah and Octavius. I don't ship that, but that's what most of the fandom is, in my opinion. And then there's, I've had, like, okay. I search for a Night at the Museum on Pinterest. I have a whole Pinterest board about Night at the Museum, and when I want to see Night at the Museum stuff, I'll, like, search for it, or I'll look through Pinterest suggestions for my Night at the Museum board. I feel like a lot of it is just, like, memes or screenshots of Tumblr posts. I think I mentioned that earlier. A lot of it is, like, screenshots of Tumblr posts. I've heard about, like, some people's headcanons. Of course, I've heard about the infamous early script of Battle of the Smithsonian. I'll talk a little bit more about my opinions on that later. I'd just like to clarify, Ackman Ra is my favorite character. So, of course, I am a little bit mad about the original script, now that I know what some of it was supposed to be, and I'll talk about that later, as I said. So yeah, I have a few Night at the Museum memes on, like, saved to my Pinterest profile, or in my Night at the Museum Pinterest board. I don't know that much about the fandom, as I said earlier at the beginning of this video, but, I feel like I kind of am part of it. And then, of course, every time I see a video that has, like, a Night at the Museum reference or something, I'll freak out and be like, ah, OMG! And then I'll geek out in the comments with this long paragraph. Like, I saw this, I was watching a YouTube video about Madagascar, and the guy mentioned that Ben Stiller is also in Night at the Museum. I was like, ah, Night at the Museum! So, I'll always geek out in the comment sections if there's a Night at the Museum reference. You guys might have seen that short of me, geeking out because C.com on the Rumble Pack podcast made a Night at the Museum reference. Sorry, I'm blabbing about how I freak out over Night at the Museum references. Sorry. Let me continue. The ships. So I'm starting with the canon ships. I'm not entirely sure how to go about talking about the ships, to be honest. I guess I could just talk about my opinions on these. Okay, if we're talking about my opinions on these, I don't really care, because I'm not a big shipper. Sacagawea and Teddy, it's kind of a weird ship, to be honest. Because, like, I don't know, it just is, I don't really care that much about it. They don't really do that much with it, except in the first movie, as that's part of Teddy's arc, is becoming brave enough to talk to Sacagawea, and then, starting up a relationship with her. And then that kind of continues on throughout the series as basically just, them being, like, them walking next to each other in the third movie, or him sadly and yet romantically saying goodbye to her in the second movie in the beginning, when they think that they're all going to be shipped off to the Smithsonian, which they do, but then they come back. So yeah, I don't have that much to say about Sacagawea and Teddy, except that it's kind of weird, and I don't really care. And then there's the next one. The next one that I have written down in my notes here is Larry and Amelia Earhart. Which, no. Just no. And it's not because I feel like they don't work together that well. I guess they do. It's just like, okay, I don't really like Night at the Museum 2. I don't really like Amelia Earhart. like just the character in general. And I thought it was kind of weird that she was like simping for him the entire time, and then he was just like, ew, get away from me. And then all of a sudden, he's like, oh wait, she's cool, I'm gonna kiss her before we say goodbye. Like, bro, you were expressing no interest in her before, except for the fact that everybody around you was shipping you two, which is not, that was not him expressing interest, that was him being like, no, stop, we're not together. I mean, I guess there is the part where they just kind of accept it, or accept that people keep shipping them, like, when Abraham Lincoln was like, I never lie, you guys are a cute couple, and then he's like, oh, okay, whatever, okay, fine. But, like, he didn't really express any interest in her, and she's annoying, and I feel like, I don't know, because of, like, the way, he is kind of boring compared to her, in that he just wants to get the stuff done, and she's all adventure and fun stuff, and, you know, she did help with his character arc in that movie of needing to quit his current job of running Daily Industries. Is it Industries? It's Daily Devices, my bad. And, like, how he needs to do what he loves in order to be happy, aka be the night guard at the Museum of Natural History in New York again. But yeah, I just don't really like them that much. I don't know. And then, of course, there's the comedic canon ship of Tilly and Law, the British Museum night guard, and the Neanderthal wax figure that was made to look like Larry. So that's a weird one. I feel like that also came out of nowhere, but that's the thing about it, is it's supposed to be funny. It brings more comedy to the end of the movie. It brings comedy to the middle when he traps her in her little box booth thingy. You know, it's all supposed to be funny, that's the thing. Sorry, my nose is, like, really stuffy right now, so if I keep saying my N's like D's and stuff like that, I'm sorry if that's annoying you. I know that annoys me sometimes, but, like, I can't really help it. My nose is stuffy, and I don't want to go blow it right now. I don't have too much time to keep filming, actually, so that's why. Then we have... This isn't particularly canon. This is kind of something that they alluded to happening, but didn't really happen. Was Larry and Rebecca, the receptionist, I think? She was also, like, a tour guide in the museum in the first movie. I don't have much to say about that either, because it wasn't like it wasn't really actually happening. That was just an additional thing to add to the story of, like, him trying to kind of flirt with her, but knowing nothing about Teddy, or, like, the part when they go get a coffee and she tells him more about Attila and Sacagawea, and how she's really interested in Sacagawea and, you know, writing that, paper, I can't remember what they called it. Dissertation? I don't know, bro. But yeah, that was another... I feel like Rebecca was just there to add another arc, and, like, add a little bit of conflict before the last night, or the last night that's shown in the movie. Well, it's actually technically not the last night, but the night that the old dudes steal the tablet. She adds more conflict before then. Still not much to say about that, and I don't even know if that's actually... It's not really canon. It's like they were thinking maybe they should be a ship. And, like, maybe they were thinking of bringing her back in the next movie, so that could kind of continue. But then that didn't happen, and he ended up with Amelia instead. Or not really ended up with, but ended up liking Amelia Earhart instead. Now let's get into the non-canon ships. Now, I am not a fan of non-canon ships. As I was saying, I'm not even a fan of ships in general, and I don't know much about the fandom's non-canon ships, except for Jedtavius, which you guys kind of already know my opinion on Jedtavius. I don't really like it. Now, of course, I don't really care about non-canon ships. Then, I've also seen on Pinterest, you know, this is basically all I know. I've seen, like, fan arts of Larry and Aquaman and Lancelot. For some reason, they like to ship Aquaman with other people, which I guess makes sense. Like, he could have a love interest, or he could use a love interest, I guess. Most people want characters to have a love interest, but, like, no? Like, no? Just because Aquaman looked at Larry or looked at Lancelot or thought Lancelot was funny because he's kind of stupid upon just awakening. He's kind of stupid in general, to be honest. That's just, he's really comedic. That does not mean that he is interested in them in that way, you know? That doesn't mean he's, like, falling in love, or that, you know, that Larry or that Lancelot is falling in love with him, you know? Like, I don't really understand why people will ship characters who barely interact. Like, they'll see them make eye contact one time, and they'll be like, oh, ship! And I'm just like, no! Stick to the canon stuff, please. I don't know. I don't like ships. That's why I kind of put ships in this earlier part of the videos, because I don't really care to talk about them. I said earlier that I'm going to talk about, I'm starting from the stuff I'm a little bit least interested in to the stuff I'm most interested in. And, you know, I'm not as interested in the ships. I just thought that's something I should yap about as well. You know, like, there's not much shipping going on there except for Jedtavius, of course. So, yeah, that's the end of my ships part. Sorry, I don't know how to, like, get out of the ships. Get me out of here! Okay. Next up on my list of stuff to talk about is the humor. The Night at the Museum trilogy is, of course, a comedy trilogy. So, you know, I feel like there are both iconic jokes and running jokes. And, of course, there's also subtle jokes, but I can't really remember the subtle jokes because, of course, they're subtle. So, you know, it's got its iconic moments that are really funny, like when Aquaman emerges from his sarcophagus and is just like, you would not believe how stuffy it is in there. That's so funny! That, like, literally the perfect entrance for his character. I feel like that line just characterizes him off the bat. What? Is off the bat right? I don't know, whatever. There's a lot of iconic stuff in here. Let's see, let me think of the iconic stuff. There's, of course, hey dum-dum, give me gum-gum. And that's, of course, also a running joke. As the Easter Island head continues to call people dum-dums and ask them for gum-gum. I was actually talking about this earlier. One of the most iconic things from the Night at the Museum franchise, one of the most iconic jokes is Hugh Jackman. The Hugh Jackman cameo, and then Lancelot calls him Hugh Jackman. I mentioned this earlier in the video and how iconic it is, because it is so iconic. I saw this video of this influencer. She, like, does nerdy stuff and whatever. She was going to interview Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds for Deadpool and Wolverine. She was wearing a shirt. I think it was supposed to be I love Ryan Gosling, but she taped over the Gosling and wrote Reynolds on the tape, and then on the back she also wrote and Hugh Jackman, but she didn't write Hugh Jackman, she wrote Huge Ackman. It's that iconic. Like, bro, there is the fact that Dexter pees on people. That's a running joke, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm not good with, like, listing out the humor stuff or talking about humor stuff because I'm not very funny myself. I just like to laugh at things. And to be honest, I'm not good at, like, analyzing movies, because I just really like, I don't know, when I watch a movie, I just sit there and enjoy it. Whether or not it's actually that good, you know, if it's, like, super bad, I won't really enjoy it. But, you know, even if it's not that good, like, I watched Red 1 last night, and, you know, that wasn't very good, but, you know, I was enjoying myself. I'm not very good at, like, reviewing movies and analyzing them in that way, because I just like to sit there and enjoy them. You know, they're kind of like an escapism from real life for a bit, and that's really fun. So, you know, I don't really pay that much attention to, you know, analyzing the kind of humor that it is so that I can give commentary on it eventually. I just kind of laugh. I just watch the jokes and I laugh. Like, I'll notice if he said that before, and I'll think it's funny, like, oh my word, he said that before, that's hilarious, it's still going, but, like, you know? Okay, now we're getting to the more interesting stuff, I'd say. I'm talking about my opinions on the second movie. Okay, so, as I've said several times before, I don't like the second movie that much. So here's why. This is my reasoning, because I know a lot of people really like the second movie. They think it's the funniest, and honestly, I do too. For one, I don't like Amelia Earhart. I find her annoying. Like, the fact that literally when she's first introduced, she won't shut up, and she ends up almost getting Larry caught. And I'm just like, shut up. Oh, also, the fact that she tried to kiss Larry several times when he didn't even want her to. And, like, I don't know, she kept flirting with him, and, you know, she was in denial about the fact that he didn't like her at first. And now, here's a more interesting reason why I don't like the second movie. I feel betrayed. As a fan of Aquaman, I feel betrayed by the people that made the movies that he wasn't even in it. Like, bro's older brother was in it. We could have gotten older brother, or we could have gotten brotherly interactions. We could have gotten, like, almost a Thor and Loki kind of dynamic. We could have. And, like, I've seen on Pinterest parts of the early script, and how, in the end, Aquaman was supposed to save Larry, and then kick Kamen-Ra himself into the underworld, and all that stuff. And, like, it makes me mad that that didn't happen, and that Aquaman-Ra wasn't even in the second movie, or barely was, had, like, 5 lines. His ending part, in the end of the movie, hilarious. I love that so much. That was really iconic. But, like, bro just says, the Guardian of Brooklyn returns, and then 2 hours later, argues with a child in the end. Like, why is that all he did? Why? I kind of feel betrayed by the whole series, because he's barely in it, because, like, the third movie was about his tablet. And he only got, like, 15 lines. But okay, that's probably a little bit of a... It's probably a little bit of a stretch to say only 15 lines. I'm pretty sure it was more than that. But, like, it wasn't that much. And that just, you know, that makes me mad. Okay. Another reason I don't really like the second movie is because I feel like it didn't need to exist. It doesn't really add anything at all to the series, except, you know, Aquaman-Ra's older brother, character development that Larry didn't need, the night program. But, you know, I don't feel like anybody would be confused if there wasn't a second movie to establish the night program. Like, they could have easily established the night program at the beginning of the third movie and just had the third movie be the second movie and end the trilogy and make it just 2 movies? I don't know, I feel like the fact that it was a trilogy does make the ending more sad. But yeah, I feel like if they had brought mention of the second movie in the third movie, then it would have made me feel a little better about the fact that the second movie shouldn't exist. But, like, I just feel like it shouldn't have existed. I just realized I might have been talking a little bit too fast, this whole time, because I'm trying to get my ideas out, I guess. Like, I need to make sure that everything I want to say ends up being said. So yeah, sorry if I've been talking too fast. Okay, the next part about my opinions on the second movie, I'm gonna talk about what I do like about it. I've already mentioned how I like that there's a little bit of extra lore with Common Raw in there. There is the introduction of a possibility that he killed Achman Ra and maybe even his parents. Which, in the original, I've heard that in the original, or the early script of Battle of the Smithsonian, Common Ra actually does say that he killed Achman Ra in his sleep, which is like, ooh, but at the same time, I was right. I did make an entire long community post explaining my theory and explaining why I think that and stuff like that. So yeah, I do like the extra lore aspect. Another thing I like about the second movie is, I also mentioned this, it's probably the funniest part of the trilogy, or the funniest movie in the trilogy. There's so many funny things, there's a lot of, there's a lot of actor cameos that are really funny. I'll bring that up a little bit later, too. It's just probably the funniest movie. And then I also really like the ending of that movie. Like, it's so much fun. Like, the part where, Dr. McPhee is talking to Larry, and he's like, as far as night gods go, I'm what? The best. But it's really funny and it's really sweet that he's like, you know what, you're a good night guard, you're cool, I like you, and all that. And then, okay, another thing I really like about this second movie is how many people from The Office are in there. Like, at the beginning, Larry is, walking around Daily Devices after filming, like, a commercial or something. Maybe it was an infomercial because of how long it seemed. One of the guys that works for him, obviously, is, like, following him around, and it's Andy from The Office. It's Andrew Bernard. It's Nard Dog. Well, I know his name isn't actually Andrew Bernard, by the way. It's Ed Helms. There's also the guy who plays Daryl. I forget his name, but the guy who plays Daryl in The Office is one of the Tuskegee Airmen that are on the march once again. There was also the lady who plays Kelly in The Office, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name right now off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But she's in there too. Like, there's a lot of Office people. Not to mention, the Amy Adams, the lady who plays Amelia Earhart, is also in The Office. She wasn't a major character or anything like that, but she was in it. That concludes my talking about my opinions on the second movie. You guys now know why I don't like it that much, and you now know what I do like about it, which is cool. Yo, what up? I'm back. I'm wearing a sweatshirt now. Let's get into why I love this movie so much. Some of these are gonna be obvious reasons, such as, characters, the fact that it's fun, that it's iconic, stuff like that, and then there's other parts that I thought would be interesting to talk about. Like, I love the soundtrack, and I'll get into that later. Let's start with the fact that it's fun. Like, I was saying this already, I like to use a movie, I feel like when I watch a movie, I just kind of lock in on enjoying it. Like, it's a bit of an escapism from real life, and how, like, the fact that, like, when I watch Night at the Museum, I just kind of retreat into the deep parts of my mind that are just full of Night at the Museum stuff. And, I actually imagine a self-insert fanfiction of this movie, and it's basically just the movies themselves, but with me in them. And that's really cool, and it's really cool that I'm able to do that with these movies, because they're fun that way, they're imaginative that way. Hang on, I'm gonna take out my hair. And then, of course, they're iconic. I've said this already. There are so many funny moments, so many iconic quotes. Like, it's a really fun time. It's the whole movie series is such a fun time. Another reason I love this series so much is the characters. I feel like each character provides not only comedic relief, like each character has their own way of providing comedic relief, to be honest, but also it feels like they're just, you know, some of them are not fleshed out, of course. Some of them are just the comedic reliefs, but they don't really have to, like, the characters don't really have to be fleshed out to be enjoyable, or, yeah, they're just there to be funny. They're there for the fun of it. Some of my favorite characters are they're kind of the main characters, really. I love Larry. I like his, I think you'd call it cynicism, how he just kind of, he brings more reality to the unrealness of the museum, and not in, like, he makes it feel more real when you're watching the movie, but it's like he just kind of helps people, he helps the museum people to chill a little bit. What did Lancelot say about him? He said, "The fool seems agitated." Yes. I love the way they kind of just characterized him as being agitated in the third movie, because that's, you know, what he is. The fool seems agitated. That's often his way, although I can assure you he's not a fool. He's just the grounded character that helps everybody to just kind of be chill. A little bit. A little bit. Nobody can really be chill there. I also really like Nicky. Like, okay, the first two movies, he was just the cute kid. And, you know, he's adorable. Oh my word. The first two movies, he's such a cute kid. And then the third one, he's really funny. He adds some comedic relief as well as some conflict, to the story, with Larry trying to figure out what to do with him. I really like the way, like, you can tell that it's Nicky that's just grown up in the third movie. I love that you can kind of tell that he has grown up around the museum exhibits, and that, you know, he's grown up around Larry, because he's got that sarcasm to him. That is also the way Larry is. Well, not only his sarcasm, but, like, the way he tries to, I don't know, like, diffuse conflicts a little bit. Like, when, Larry comes home to him holding a party in their apartment, and, Larry's really mad at him, and he's just like, let's just reboot this, let's just redo the whole tone of this puppy. We'll talk about this tomorrow, and we'll clean up tomorrow. You know, Team Daily, let's get this done. And all that stuff, like, that's almost the same way that Larry would kind of diffuse a situation, is like, let's retry, let's chill a little bit, you know? That's the way Larry is, and it's cool that you can see that in the third movie with Nicky. And then, of course, another character I really like is Lancelot, because he's absolutely hilarious. He also adds a lot of emotion to the third movie, in that he's having that existential crisis of, like, wait, really? I'm a wax figure? I'm not real? Future Abby here. I'm editing right now, and I want to add something to what I was saying. Lancelot shows us an aspect of being one of the museum exhibits that comes back to life that we've never gotten to see, because in the first movie, all the characters had already been coming back to life for so long, and in the second movie, it doesn't need to exist. I'm just kidding. But he shows us what the exhibits might have felt like the first time they came to life. Like when Teddy said in the first movie that he was made in a wax factory in Poughkeepsie. How did he find that out? And, like, the Lancelot being in that movie and kind of having that existential crisis of, if there's no Camelot, no Guinevere, no Lancelot, then I'm nothing. I'm just a sad lump of misshapen wax. It shows us something that the first and second movie didn't, and that's really cool. Yeah, I just really like Lancelot. He's so funny. Okay, I'm gonna kind of go off on a tangent here. I just want to say, one of my favorite Lancelot quotes is, when he's asking Larry what their quest exactly is, and Larry's like, that tablet over there that Ak is holding, and Lancelot's just like, well, it shouldn't be too hard to take it from him. he looks well-toned and lean, but weak. It would be like taking candy from a feeble Egyptian baby. That quote gets me every time, it's so funny. And the delivery, too. Dan Stevens did an amazing job of delivering Lancelot's funny lines in a way that made them even funnier. He was amazing. And then, of course, my favorite character, Akhman-Ra. I love him so much. He's barely in the series at all, which is really sad. And also really angering because the third movie is literally about his tablet and the second movie is about his brother. So, like, you know, he doesn't get that much time, but every time he does, or every time he does get screen time, it's like he's just kind of brightening the movie. He makes it more funny. I just thought of something, I just came up with this off the top of my head. He kind of brings more perspective, especially in the first movie. No, he brings more perspective in the first movie of how crazy this whole thing seems. And, like, it's also a really interesting thing that he has no idea what a lot of the stuff going on is. Because, like, he's been trapped in his sarcophagus for years. We're actually not sure how long he's been, like, how much of the modern world he doesn't know about. Because he did say that he was at Cambridge University for a while, for a little bit. I tried to say a while and a little bit at the same time, and I said, oh. Anyway, yeah, he was at Cambridge for a little bit, so maybe, like, between the 30s and 50s, I still don't really understand the timeline, but I'll talk about that later, too. Yeah, he's just really funny. I love him so much. Okay. This is an interesting part. This is an interesting part that I want to get into. The soundtrack. I did say that I was gonna talk about the soundtrack later. So, the soundtrack is so good! It really adds so much to the movie as well. Like, okay, the scene where they're fighting the dragon demon thing in the third movie, the Zhang Lu, that song, it brings so much more action, suspense, all the fun stuff to the movie. And of course, there are a lot of pretty iconic melodies, or at least repeated melodies, in the soundtrack as well. Like, there's the da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. What's another one? Hang on. In, like, some action scenes, usually when characters are running and stuff, there's the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and it almost sounds like a Star Wars thing. It sounds like kind of like Darth Vader's thing, like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Now that I hum it by itself, it sounds like that. Then there's this kind of, they have a victory tune, too. It goes da 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 da. And then there's another victory one that's a more emotional victory one, and it's oh no, I forgot it. Hang on. Oh, it's da 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 da. Da 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 da. Oh my word. Yes, that's iconic. Oh, and then of course there's the da 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 da, which is literally from the main Night at the Museum theme. The Night at the Museum theme is on my main playlist. Like, I have a study playlist, which is full of, like, instrumental songs, like movie soundtracks or instrumental versions of songs that I listen to that just happen to be on Spotify. But the Night at the Museum theme, as well as being on my study playlist, is also on my regular playlist, because it's so good. I love it so much. Like the da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, it's so iconic, bro. Okay, now, okay, I have more to talk about the soundtrack from. I'm sorry I just sat there repeating a bunch of iconic melodies from the movie. The songs. So we're gonna kind of do I decided I'm gonna do this in like chronological order of the way the song, like when the songs happen. Getting Past Security, that's the name of one of the songs, from Battle of the Smithsonian. This goes so hard. It's from that scene, at the beginning of Battle of the Smithsonian, when Larry's trying to sneak into the Smithsonian, and, like, you know, he's, like, on a mission. It's, like, the morning. He's trying to get to the archives, the federal archives, find his friends, get out before sunset, so that they don't come back to life, and Common Raw doesn't come back to life. And it goes so hard. It's like, da, 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 and okay, I said that already. It goes really hard. And then, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the soundtrack is just, it fits really well with the different characters, and it'll change the vibe of the song to kind of go with the culture of the character as well. Like, they'll add a little flair of the culture of the character, or just kind of the nature of the character themselves. Like in, the first song in the first scene of Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb. It's called the Akhmenrah Expedition, and they're in Egypt, so they add like, or it's not really just added, like the whole vibe is that, like, kind of Egyptian vibe. You'd honestly have to listen to it. I might be able to get, like, clips of the sound for you. Like, I might be able to... Oh, I probably won't, actually. Future Abby reporting, I definitely will not. But, you know, just look it up. Listen to the songs. The Akhmenrah Expedition and Getting Past Security from Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb, and Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian. Mwah. The Akhmenrah Expedition is a really cool one, and I feel like it's a really good demonstration of the way they add a little bit of extra flair to the scenes. And by they, I mean Alan Silvestri. Alan Silvestri is the one that made the soundtracks, and they are amazing! Like, my bro cooked. My bro absolutely cooked. Okay. Now, I want to get into more of the emotionalness of these movies. That's why the next part I'm going to talk about in why I love these movies so much is the emotional parts. But for right now, I want to talk about one of the emotional songs in the soundtrack. This song gets me every time. It's called Seeing Your Boy Become a Man, and I am adding the quotation marks because that's actually, there are quotation marks around the name of the song, because that's something that Akhmenrah's dad says. He was talking to Larry, thanking him for helping fix the tablet, getting the tablet back from Lancelot, all that stuff. Then he looks over at Akhmenrah, who's talking to his mom, and he just says, "It's a strange thing, seeing your boy become a man." And it's really emotional and really sad. Well, not really sad, but just emotional, because Larry is also, he's dealing with the same thing of seeing his boy become a man. He's watching Nikki grow up, and he has to let go of Nikki eventually, and just kind of let him do his own thing like he's been wanting to do. He wants to go DJ in Ibiza. He can go DJ in Ibiza. Because, you know, he's growing up. And okay, the song gets me every time. I'm just like, no! Because Alan Silvestri has this melody, and it's, like, so emotional for me, and I don't know why. It's just, like, really sad sounding, and it just goes, da 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 da. They use this in other parts of the movie, or other parts of the soundtrack, too, but, like, specifically in this one. Like, there's another part of this song, Seeing Your Boy Become a Man, that goes da 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 da, and it's just like super emotional the whole time, as that's the part where they kind of join together again back in the section of Egypt where Ahkmenrah's parents are, and they're just kind of, you know, they're talking. Ahkmenrah's dad, Merenkere, is thanking Larry for helping get the tablet back and bringing back his son. Like, all this stuff. I think, oh yeah, in this song, also what's happening is everybody's saying their goodbyes. Like, the exhibits are going and telling Larry that the tablet's staying at the British Museum, but they're going back to the Museum of Natural History. You know, of course, also, because Ahkmenrah's my favorite character, another part of that scene that gets me really emotional is when he says goodbye to Larry, because he, like, stutters, and it's like, no! My bro was about to cry, saying goodbye to Larry. I'm kind of sad that he doesn't get any hugs goodbye. Like, nobody hugs him before they say goodbye. They just kind of stand at the foot of the stairs like, bye. But yeah, no, that song is the beginning of the sad songs at the end of the movie, and it shows, because okay, Alan Silvestri went really hard for those sad songs, because they get me every time. I have cried listening to those songs before. Like, I was literally just reading a Minecraft fanfiction book, basically, and I don't even know if I was at an emotional part in the book, but I was listening to my study playlist, which had Seeing Your Boy Become a Man, A Farewell Kiss, and Teddy's Goodbye in the playlist. I think I was actually just listening to the Night at the Museum Secret of the Tomb soundtrack album in general, but those songs made me cry! Specifically, okay, there's a specific part of A Farewell Kiss as well. It's just the isolated piano playing, the kind of sad goodbye song that they have in that, the sad goodbye melody, and it goes, da, 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 da. And of course, that song, specifically that melody, is a little bit ruined by the fact that it is played almost exactly in, Battle of the Smithsonian when Larry and Amelia Earhart kiss each other goodbye. It's also played at the exact time when Larry and Dexter kiss each other goodbye. And, okay, the song is really emotional for him literally talking to a monkey, but, like, that isolated piano that, like, actually gets you really emotional in that part where he's sitting in Ahkmenrah's tomb with Dexter and saying goodbye to him and all that stuff. It's so emotional! I'm sorry, I was supposed to just talk about Seeing Your Boy Become a Man, and then I started talking about, like, the rest of the sad songs. My bad. Anyway, oh yeah, the next part I wanted to talk about in why I love this series so much is the emotional parts. I feel like I kind of did already talk about the emotional parts at this point. Man, I've got the soundtrack running through my mind right now. This is wild. And yeah, the emotional parts are really good too. Like, it's a comedy movie, but they're not scared of, and they're not bad at making emotional scenes or more serious scenes, like in the first movie. Like, usually when I think of the emotional scenes in this series, I think of the last few scenes in the trilogy, when Larry is saying goodbye to all the exhibits. But a good, serious, emotional scene, too, would be... honestly, this isn't as emotional as it is just serious. It's when Nicky is talking to his dad about how Larry might be moving to Queens, New York soon, because he's been evicted again. And he's like, what if you're just a regular guy and you need to get a normal job? And he's like, that's a good serious moment. There's the parts when Larry tries to quit and Teddy tries to continue to convince him to continue to try and get the museum in order. There's also the part when the caveman fades away. Like, when you think about the concept of that scene, it's kind of funny. Like, a monkey lets out a monkey opens the window and then the caveman dies because of it. Like, that's kind of, it's a funny concept, or it sounds funny on the surface, but they did a good job of making that serious too. Like, that whole beginning part of the scene where Dexter starts to take off with Larry's keys and Larry's trying to chase him around, it's really funny, it's really comedic. Like, that's one of the most comedic parts of the first movie, is when he's just chasing Dexter around the museum as he has the keys. But once the caveman gets let out, once Larry realizes the caveman gets let out, it goes really serious, and he runs as fast as he can to get to the front door and hopefully get the caveman back inside before sunrise. But he can't, because... Oh, I just realized, that's actually after he quit that he tries to save the caveman. Like, he's like, I give up, Teddy, I can't do this anymore. And then the night's almost over, and he realizes that the caveman has been let out, and he runs as fast as he can. And the caveman fades away, turns to dust. And there's like nothing he can do, and he feels really sad about it. But then he looks over and sees that Teddy, in his wax state now because the sun has arisen, he's still holding the keys. He still has the keys. And he's basically saying, you can still do this, Larry. I believe in you. Please don't give up on us yet. And Larry takes the keys and he's okay. He's like, okay, one more night. Even though Teddy doesn't know that he said that. Of course, Larry does get fired the next morning and then given only one more night. But then he gets to stay. Right? Right? Yeah. All of the exhibits escaping brings a lot of publicity to the museum, and then Dr. McPhee lets him stay. I feel like that's a little silly, but that's like something I could get into in a different video or something. We are at the lore section of this video. I wanted to make the lore section the last part, because to me it's the most interesting. As I've said, I've been going from what I'm least interested in to what I'm most interested in. But also because I feel like it would be the most interesting to you guys to hear the lore stuff. Now, I have analyzed a lot about the lore, but I couldn't really think about it off the top of my head as I wrote down the outline for this video. So I might not be able to, like, give you all the lore that I can think of, but, I'm gonna talk about a lot of the lore stuff that I know and a lot of the lore stuff that I've thought about. I think the best place to start here would be for me to tell you just the story of the tablet of Akhmun-Ra, aka the story of the ancient, priceless Egyptian artifact that brings the museum to life every night. So all of this was told in the third movie, all this story was told. There's a little bit of extra lore, a little bit of, I guess, a little extra story in the first movie, but not that much. So basically, Akhmun-Ra's parents loved him so much that even though he was a baby and had his whole life ahead of him, they were they did not want to lose him. What his dad said was he knew he could never bear to part with him eventually, whenever it would be. So they had the priests of their god Khonshu. I don't know if they had the priests make the tablet, but they made the tablet and had the priests of their god Khonshu, the god of the night and protector of the night travelers, which you would know if you've seen Moon Knight as well. He blessed the tablet and gave it the ability to bring things to life at night. And they had their tomb, the tomb built for Akhmun-Ra and his parents, they had it built specifically so that it could harness the light of the moon perfectly every night so that it would restore its power. That's how it began. And then after Akhmun-Ra and his parents died, we're not entirely sure what happens here. A lot of the lore is a lot of, like, gray area, where basically they don't really clarify what happened. I think that a possibility is after they died, they were put in their tomb, and they just came to life in their tomb every night, and they just stayed in their tomb every night. I don't know. Maybe they didn't come to life at all, like Akhmun-Ra, like, came to life at Cambridge University, or until his parents came to life at the British Museum. I don't know. But I feel like they might have just come to life in their tomb for thousands of years until, of course, Cecil Fredericks, fell into their tomb, as his dad was trying to discover it and excavate it. Now, of course, after he fell into their tomb, the contents of it were taken and shipped to different museums. Cecil explained this in the third movie. Akhmun-Ra's parents were taken to the British Museum, and Akhmun-Ra was taken to the Museum of Natural History. Now, there might have been a period before he was taken to the Museum of Natural History where he was at Cambridge. I'm still not sure, because they don't clarify. I'll talk about the unclarified parts of the lore later. But yeah, Akhmun-Ra and his tablet were taken to the British Museum. Another thing about the tablet, though, is that apparently, it can also bring people back from the afterlife. Which, now that I think about it, really makes sense, because it brings Akhmun-Ra and his parents and Khamun-Ra back. But this is another unclarified thing, I'll bring that up later if I can remember. Khamun-Ra had this gate to the underworld that had to be opened with the tablet of Akhmun-Ra. And, of course, we know this because of this is explained in the second movie. An interesting thing I noticed, I don't know if anybody else has pointed this out, I'm sure somebody out there within the Night at the Museum fandom, like on Tumblr or somewhere, has pointed out that a chunk of the tablet is missing from the corner, but in the second movie we see that that chunk is in the part of the part of Khamun-Ra's gate to the underworld where the tablet is supposed to go. So, maybe I'm kind of just running on my own train of thought here. I just came up with this thought. Maybe him and Khamun-Ra, Akhmun-Ra and Khamun-Ra were fighting over the tablet, and thus a chunk of it is stuck in the thing. The only time the tablet is complete is when it's put into Khamun-Ra's gate to the underworld. And, you know, there's a little password thing you need to say and whatever. What's interesting is it does also have, you hear that it has like a story being, a little bit of a story being told on it, I guess. Not really a story, but a message because of the hieroglyphics on the spinny button thingies. It seems like the story changes if the password changes as well, I noticed, because if the message that the thing is saying, like, if the password is changed and thus the little buttons are moved around, it's gonna say a different thing, or it might, because Common Raw tried to type in the password to open up the gate to the underworld, and it didn't work because apparently mother and father must have changed the password. So apparently if you change the password, like, the message might change, because they were able to figure out what the password was by the message that the new arrangement of the buttons conveyed somehow. I don't know. This is just extra stuff that I'm observing on the spot. But yeah, that's the story of the tablet. Of course, the reason that the entire third movie happens is because the tablet hasn't been in direct contact with Moonlight in years, because it hasn't been in Akhman-Ra and his parents' tomb. So the Moonlight can't directly hit it, and thus its power wasn't being rejuvenated every night. So we know that it starts to fade if it doesn't make direct contact with Moonlight for a long time. So now that I think about it, that means that hopefully that means that every once in a while, Akhman-Ra and his parents, now that they're in the British Museum, are gonna just kind of take the tablet out into the moonlight every once in a while, so that its power is rejuvenated and they don't have to worry about it fading, and whatever. Okay, also, I just realized something. I'm gonna go on a quick tangent. I feel like I've noticed this before. The ending of Night at the Museum, if you really think about it, or the ending of the movie, the main quest of the movie, is a little anticlimactic. Like, you think about it, they had been on this quest through the British Museum to find Akhman-Ra's dad and ask him about the tablet and figure out what's going on with it. But, once they get there, all he tells them is, oh yeah, it needs moonlight. It needs to be under the moonlight. But of course, they do add to the conflict with having Lancelot steal the tablet. But when you really think about it, their entire quest was only to find out that the tablet needed to be in the moonlight. Like, imagine they just were walking through, and Larry, when he first realized that the tablet needed moonlight, ran as quickly as he can to a window that was showing moonlight through it. So imagine if they were just, like, walking through the British Museum, and then, I know they'd never do this, but imagine, and then they, like, I don't know, Akhman-Ra's, like, staring at the tablet, trying to think, what could be wrong with it, And then he walks under a window with the moonlight shining through it, and then all of a sudden the rust on the tablet disappears and he has no idea why. Like, that's with how anticlimactic that information is, that could happen, or that could have happened in the movie. And that just kind of, I feel like that just goes to show that that ending is a little bit strange, like, not very well written, I guess. Anyway, I have more lore to go through, more lore. I wonder how long it's gonna take for me to get through this lore stuff. Okay, I wanted to talk about my, the previously mentioned theory that, and this actually isn't a theory anymore, but what I thought was previously my own theory, that Common-Ra killed Akhman-Ra and his parents. Now I know now that actually Common-Ra was gonna say in Battle of the Smithsonian that he killed Akhman-Ra, but that doesn't end up happening, and so I just ended up making this incredibly long theory that, he killed Akhman-Ra and his parents. See, they never clarify, or he doesn't clarify in the original script for Night at the Museum Battle of the Smithsonian whether or not, he killed, or whether or not Akhman-Ra killed his parents as well, but I feel like it's kind of implied in the fact that he became the 5th king of Egypt. Now, I just think, this is another thing I'm going to talk about later, or thing I wanted to talk about later. I feel like, Akhman-Ra's parents probably didn't give Akhman-Ra the throne because he was already evil, and thus they felt that they couldn't trust him with the throne. So, I'm thinking that maybe Akhman-Ra killed his parents as well, because he knew that if it was just Akhman-Ra that he killed, who was the king at that time, his dad would just become king again, because they don't trust Akhman-Ra. They wouldn't give him the throne if Akhman-Ra died. So I think he did kill his parents too, and thus became the 5th king of Egypt, as they were saying. So yeah, that's another piece of the lore that's pretty interesting to me. Honestly, their family has some really wild lore, and I wish that more of it were clarified. I wish that they'd make a 4th movie that clarified all that. Like, the 4th movie, like, could be, like, one of the main plot points could be about Akhman-Ra's family, and all that. I think that would be really cool, but, you know, whatever. Okay, now I want to get into the unclarified stuff of the lore. So, one thing that I have mentioned before, specifically in my, reasons, my, proof I might be a little too obsessed with Night at the Museum, but it gets progressively weirder short, in that, I was reading a school assignment that I did. Basically, I was pretending to ask my teacher for help, but I wasn't doing, like, math, even though it was my math teacher that I was pretending to ask for help. I asked her about a pretend Night at the Museum lore class, and I was saying that I couldn't figure out if Akhman-Ra and his tablet were brought to the Museum of Natural History in 1954, like, Teddy says in the first movie, or 1932, like the beginning sequence of the 3rd movie suggests. I don't know. And that's another unclarified thing. My theory is that, of course, we know that he was discovered in 1932, or his tomb was discovered in 1932. So it could have been that actually he was shipped away to, or they were both shipped, Akhman-Ra and his parents were all shipped to England, and thus Akhman-Ra was in Cambridge, and his parents were in the British Museum. Or it's probably just an oversight from the writers, and I don't know what then is canon. Like, okay, so there are like 2 options here. It seems like the more plausible one is that what Teddy said in the first movie isn't true, and he wasn't there at 1950, or his first time there wasn't 1954. But rather, he was just shipped there in 1932. Or my theory is possible, but I feel like my theory actually isn't as possible, because, when Cecil was telling his story in, the 3rd movie, he said that, I think he said it was a joint expedition. The Akhman-Ra expedition was a joint expedition, which means that they shipped Akhman-Ra's parents off to London and him to the Museum of Natural History in New York. I think, basically, I'm thinking that in terms of lore, Cecil's story of how the tablet got to the Museum of Natural History overrides what Teddy said in the first movie, because that was, like, 8 years later. So, yeah. Another unclarified thing, something they don't really explain at all, is why Common Raw wasn't given the throne. And I was already talking about this. I think it might be, or this is my theory, is that because he was angry and at his parents and jealous of how much attention Akhman Ra got instead of him, that he became evil and bitter due to the fact that I feel like his parents might have kind of neglected him because they liked Akhman Ra more. Like, it makes me really sad to hear Akhman Ra's dad's story of the tablet and how he said, "You were instantly more precious to me than anything I'd ever laid eyes on," or something like that. Which literally means that as soon as Akhman Ra was born, he cared about him and loved him more than Common Ra. Which is like, bro, you should not favorite your children. You should not have a favorite child. So, like, I feel like it might be the case that Common Ra kind of turned evil because, he felt neglected by his parents and jealous of his brother, and thus his parents didn't trust him with the throne either because he became evil. It could also be that he was not evil whatsoever until his parents decided to give Akhman Ra the throne instead of him just because they liked him more. Like, I don't know, because this is unclarified. Another unclarified thing is what happened to Akhman Ra and his parents after they died in terms of their tomb and coming back to life. We don't know if they came back to life in their tomb or anything like that, which I feel like is the most likely thing. But then again, if they could come back to life every night, why didn't they just continue their reign forever? I don't know. I guess it would be weird to have a king and to have a king and queen, and prince who only rule at night because they're only alive at night. Maybe Common Ra made it so that somehow, like, their tomb was buried to the point that the tablet couldn't come to life at night, or the tablet couldn't bring them to life at night. I don't know if that's possible. And, you know, I don't know what was going on with them in terms of, like, did they come back to life for thousands of years until they were discovered, and then all of a sudden his parents don't come back to life and he does, but he's in a different spot? I feel like that would be really sad, but it is possible that that's what happened. We really don't know. There's so much unclarified stuff. Another thing, this is kind of a theory of mine. That's what I was trying to say. It's a theory of mine that, when a dead person who's being brought back to life by the tablet comes back to life, they don't know about the passage of, they don't know if any time has passed, and they don't feel like any time has passed since the last time they came back to life. Future Abby here again. I was trying to explain something to kind of explain this theory, but to be honest, it's not really a theory. It's more just, it makes sense. And I didn't do a very good job of explaining it, so let me just kind of, I don't know, I'll give a bit of a demonstration. The night that starts off the second movie, when Larry comes to visit for one of his nostalgia tours and finds out that everybody's being shipped off to the Smithsonian, the night before the day they're being shipped to the Smithsonian, basically, and, you know, Dexter smuggled away the tablet, and then, Akhman Ra and Teddy and whoever was left in the museum didn't come back to life for a night, or actually it was a couple nights. because Dexter had the tablet at the Smithsonian. So, but what I'm trying to say here is everybody who was at the Museum of Natural History would have thought that it was just the beginning of the next night. They wouldn't know that it was 2 nights later at like 4 a.m. instead of 5 p.m. and whatever, because they hadn't come back to life in those 2 days. Does that make sense? I really hope that makes sense. I feel like I explained it better than the original video, but I still don't know if that makes sense. But like, yeah. Here's the main thing I was thinking, is his parents, upon coming back to life in the third movie in the British Museum, are just utterly confused, because they thought that when they died again, like the night before they were taken out of their tomb, if they came to life in their tomb at all, but when they thought they'd just wake up back in the tomb again, and basically, when they came back to life in the other place, they're like, whoa, what happened? And they have no clue that it's been like 90 years. Well, not 90, it would have been like 80. They would have no clue that it's been 80 years since the last time they came back to life, because they've been dead for that long. Or, they've been staying dead and not coming back to life from the tablet for that long. That's a theory I have, is that somebody coming back to life because of the tablet doesn't know how many nights it's been that they haven't come back to life, if there has been any nights that they haven't come back to life. I think that's all I have in terms of lore. If I think of anything else, I'll probably film and like stitch it into this part of the video when I edit. But I'm not done yet. Actually, I am done. I, was going to recite the first 10 minutes of Night at the Museum 3 that I had memorized, but I decided not to because that's kind of stupid. So, yeah. I just spent the last, unfortunately, like 10 minutes trying to recite the amount of the Night at the Museum 3 script I have memorized. And then I was like, that's stupid, nobody's gonna want to watch that. So now I'm just not going to, and instead, I'm just gonna say, thank you very much for watching. I really hope you watched the whole thing, because that would be super cool. I do need watch hours. I do need more watch hours, so I can get monetized eventually. And, like and subscribe if you want to. That would be nice. I like having subscribers. And yeah, bye.
And here comes the end of my documentaries.